Captain Veltar of the Keth Mori exploration vessel. Gentle Current stared at the blue planet through the observation deck. His forearms moved nervously as he watched the data streams coming from the world below. The numbers told a terrible story. Captain, his science officer Marin said softly, the atmospheric readings are getting worse. The toxin levels in their air have increased by 12% in just the last rotation. Veltar's large dark eyes reflected sadness. The Keth Mori had been watching this world for several cycles now. They had seen the small creatures on the surface struggle and fight. These beings called themselves humans, and they were dying. Show me the population centers again, Veltar ordered. The holographic display filled with images from the planet's surface. Cities covered in thick gray smoke. Rivers that ran brown and black with poison. Forests that once covered vast areas now reduced to bare ground. The humans had advanced quickly in their technology, but they had also destroyed their world in the process. The northern continent is experiencing crop failure across 60% of their farmland, Marin continued. Their ocean fish are dying from pollution. The southern ice caps are melting faster than their scientists predicted. Veltar watched as the display showed human children in the streets of their cities. Many were thin and weak from hunger. In some regions, entire families had no clean water to drink. The Keth Mori had rules about this, ancient laws that forbade interference with developing species. Sir, another crew member spoke up. We're receiving distress signals from their orbital stations. It appears their space program is collapsing due to resource shortages. The captain closed his primary eyes and thought. The Keth Mori had traveled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had seen many species rise and fall. Some destroyed themselves through war, others through greed. A few simply grew too fast for their worlds to support them. It was the natural way of things. But these humans were different somehow. Veltar had studied their communications, their art, their stories. Despite all their problems, they still helped each other. When disasters struck, humans from other regions would send aid. When children were in danger, adult humans would risk their own lives to save them. Even as their world died around them, they showed kindness to each other. Captain, Marin said quietly, there are reports of mass starvation beginning in 3 major population centers. The children. Sir, the children are dying first. Veltar's chest tightened. He had children of his own back on the Keth Mori homeworld. Healthy children who would never know hunger or thirst, who would grow up under clean skies and drink pure water. The thought of them suffering as these human children suffered made his 4 hearts ache. How long do they have? He asked. At current rates of decline, maybe 50 of their years before total ecosystem collapse. Possibly less. The bridge fell silent. 50 years seemed like a long time, but it wasn't. Not when an entire species was at stake. Veltar had watched 3 civilizations die during his lifetime. Each time he had followed orders. Each time he had done nothing. Each time he had told himself it was the right choice. Sir, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from their largest space station. It's a children's choir, sir. They're singing. Put it through. The bridge filled with young human voices. They sang in their various languages, but somehow the melody was universal. It spoke of hope despite darkness, of dreams that reached toward the stars, of a tomorrow that might be better than today. Veltar listened to the children sing and made a decision that would change everything. Begin deep scans of their agricultural systems, he ordered. I want to know exactly what they need to fix their food production. Sir? Marin looked confused. Are we considering intervention? We are considering many things, Veltar replied. Also scan their energy production methods and their medical databases. The crew exchanged glances. Everyone knew the laws. The sacred directive that had guided their people for millennia. Never interfere with a developing species. Let them find their own path even if that path led to extinction. Captain, Marin said carefully, the High Council would not approve. The High Council is not here, Veltar replied. They are not watching children starve while their parents weep helplessly. Over the next several days, the Keth Mori ship remained hidden in the outer system. They watched and learned. They discovered that humans were incredibly clever, but often worked against each other instead of together. They learned that human leaders often knew what needed to be done but couldn't agree on how to do it. Most importantly, they learned that humans never stopped trying. Even when everything seemed hopeless, individual humans would keep searching for answers. Scientists worked day and night to find solutions. Farmers experimented with new growing methods. Engineers designed better machines. Artists created beauty to keep hope alive. "I have a plan," Veltar announced to his crew. "We will not reveal ourselves. We will not make direct contact, but we will help them help themselves." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of giving humans advanced technology directly, the Keth Mori would influence their discoveries. A scientist struggling with a clean energy formula would have a sudden insight. A farmer experimenting with crops would accidentally create exactly the right combination. A doctor searching for a cure would find the missing piece of the puzzle. "We'll make it look like natural progress," Veltar explained, "like they discovered everything themselves. Because in many ways they will have. We'll just point them in the right direction." The work took months. The Keth Mori carefully studied human psychology, learning how their minds worked. They identified key researchers and inventors around the world. Then, using advanced technology that humans couldn't detect, they began to help. Dr. Sarah Chen, working on fusion energy in Beijing, suddenly understood how to solve the containment problem that had puzzled her for years. Farmer John Mueller in Germany accidentally crossbred plants in exactly the right way to create crops that could grow in poor soil. Dr. Amara Okafor in Lagos discovered a simple method to purify contaminated water using materials any human community could afford. One by one, breakthroughs happened across the human world. Each discovery seemed like a natural step forward. Human scientists built on each breakthrough, making them even better. News spread quickly through their global communication networks. Within 2 years, human agriculture had improved dramatically. Clean energy was becoming available in regions that had never had reliable power. Diseases that had killed millions were being cured with new medicines that humans had invented themselves. "They're remarkable," Marin observed, watching the planet's healing begin. "Look how quickly they're implementing these solutions. And they're sharing the knowledge freely between their different nations." Veltar smiled with all 4 mouths. "I told you they were special." Before leaving the system, Veltar had one last task. Using the ship's fabrication system, he created a small crystal beacon. It was beautiful, clear as water but filled with swirling lights. Inside the crystal, he programmed a simple message in the mathematical language that all space-traveling species eventually discovered. The beacon was placed on the dark side of Earth's moon, where humans would find it when they began exploring seriously. The message was short. "To the children of Earth, you have been given gifts not because you earned them but because you deserve them. You showed kindness when you could have chosen cruelty. You shared when you could have hoarded. You hoped when you could have despaired. These gifts come with no price except this. Remember what you learned about compassion when you reach the stars. A debt of kindness to be repaid when you are able. Your friends among the stars." As the gentle current left Earth's solar system, Veltar looked back one last time. The blue planet already looked healthier. The gray smog was beginning to clear. Reports showed that human birth rates were stabilizing as nutrition improved. "Will we ever see them again, sir?" Marin asked. "Oh yes," Veltar replied confidently. "Something tells me the humans will find us when the time is right. And when they do, I believe we'll be very glad we helped them." The Keth Mori ship disappeared into the deep galaxy, leaving humanity to grow and thrive. None of them knew that in a few hundred years, that small act of compassion would save their entire species. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the human embassy station, orbiting the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see dozens of ships from different species docked at the massive trading station. Tall, elegant Altarian vessels gleamed like silver arrows. The bulky, practical ships of the Corvan Republic sat next to sleek Zephyrian cruisers, and scattered throughout the docking bays were human ships. 300 years after they had first left their home system, humans had become one of the major powers in this section of the galaxy. Ambassador, her aide Marcus Kim, approached carrying a data tablet. "The quarterly trade reports are in. Human exports are up another 8% this cycle. The Corvan Republic is particularly interested in our medical technology." Elena smiled. Humans had a reputation as excellent traders and diplomats. Unlike many species that focused on military expansion or resource exploitation, humanity had built their galactic presence on cooperation and mutual benefit. Human colonies were known for their diverse populations, often hosting refugees from other species, or serving as neutral meeting grounds for negotiations. Any word from the archaeology teams? Elena asked. Marcus's expression grew more serious. Dr. Harrison thinks they found something significant on Kepler 442c. Ancient ruins that might be connected to the old stories. The old stories? Elena had grown up hearing them like most human children. Tales of mysterious benefactors who had helped humanity in their darkest hour. Most people assumed they were myths, created to explain how humans had made such rapid technological progress in the early 21st century, but a few researchers never stopped looking for evidence. Tell Dr. Harrison I want a full report as soon as possible, Elena said, and remind him to be discreet. If these beings are real, they might not want attention. Elena had been born on New Geneva, one of the first major human colonies. She had grown up in a world where humans, Altarians, and Corvan children attended the same schools, where different species worked together on research projects and celebrated each other's holidays. It was the kind of galaxy her grandparents could only have dreamed of. But Elena had also studied history. She knew that not all first contacts had gone well. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of species that saw cooperation as weakness and kindness as an invitation to attack. Ambassador, her communication officer called from across the deck. Priority message from Earth. Admiral Chen wants to speak with you immediately. Elena made her way to the secure communication chamber. Admiral Sarah Chen, Earth's military commander, appeared as a hologram. Her expression was grim. Elena, we've found them, Chen said without introduction. The Kethmori. They're real and they're in trouble. Elena felt her heart skip. What do you mean? 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations picked up a transmission. It was weak, almost lost in background noise, but our computers matched it to the mathematical language from the crystal beacon. The beacon, found on Luna exactly where the old story said it would be, when humanity achieved faster than light travel. For decades, linguists and scientists had tried to decode its full message. They had managed the basics, but much remained mysterious. The transmission contained coordinates, Chen continued. A star system about 400 light-years from here. We sent the stealth ship Pathfinder to investigate. What they found... Chen paused, clearly struggling with emotions. Elena, there are maybe 10,000 of them left. On one dying world. And they're under attack. Elena sank into a chair. Under attack by who? The Drakthul hegemony. The name sent a chill through Elena. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Drakthul. They controlled nearly a third of known space through brutality and overwhelming force. They believed that only the strong deserved to survive, and they proved their strength by destroying anyone weaker than themselves. How long do the Kethmori have? Elena asked. Maybe weeks. The Drakthul have been laying siege to their world for months. They're not trying to conquer it. They're trying to exterminate every living thing on the surface. Elena closed her eyes. The beings who had saved humanity, who had lifted them from the edge of extinction, were now facing the same fate. What does the Council say? Chen's expression grew even darker. The Galactic Council won't act. They're too afraid of the Drakthul. They're calling it an internal hegemony matter and refusing to intervene. But we have trade agreements with dozens of species. Mutual defense treaties, all of which contain clauses excluding conflicts with the Drakthul, Chen interrupted. Everyone's too scared to fight them directly. Elena stood and began pacing. What about the Altarian Federation? The Corvan Republic? They've been our allies for decades. They're sympathetic, but they won't commit ships. They say it would be suicide to go against the Drakthul fleet. So we're on our own. It looks that way. Chen paused. Elena, there's something else. We managed to establish communication with the Kethmori. I sent them a message explaining who we are and asking if they needed assistance. What did they say? Their leader, an old Kethmori named Veltar, sent back a message. He said, and I quote, "Children of Earth, you owe us nothing. We gave freely and expected nothing in return. Do not risk your people for ours. We are old and we have lived good lives. Let this be our ending." Elena felt tears in her eyes. Even facing extinction, the Kethmori were trying to protect humanity, just like they had 3 centuries ago. Admiral, Elena said firmly, what's the status of the Third Fleet? Battle ready and waiting for orders. But Elena, the Drakthul have over 200 ships in that system. We'd be bringing maybe 40. Numbers aren't everything, Elena replied. Send a message to President Martinez. Tell him I'm formally requesting authorization to intervene. Elena, this could mean war with the Drakthul. They've never lost a major battle. Their empire spans thousands of star systems. Elena walked back to the observation window and looked out at the peaceful scene. Human children were playing in the station's parks with alien friends. Traders from a dozen species conducted business in the markets. Scientists from different worlds worked together in the research labs. All of it was possible because 3 centuries ago, a species they had never met decided to show them kindness. "Admiral," Elena said, "patch me through to President Martinez immediately and start mobilizing the fleet." "Are you sure about this?" Elena thought about her grandparents who had lived through Earth's ecological crisis. She thought about the stories they had told her about the dark years before the breakthroughs came. She thought about children singing in space stations while their world died below them. "The Kethmori saved us when we couldn't save ourselves," she said. "They asked for nothing except that we remember kindness. Well, now it's time to remember." Within hours, the human response was coordinated. President Martinez addressed the Earth Congress, reminding them of humanity's debt to their unknown benefactors. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would repay what they owed regardless of the cost. Admiral Chen began mobilizing not just the Third Fleet, but every available human warship. From the massive battleships that protected the core worlds to the converted freighters that patrolled the outer colonies, humanity prepared for war. But Elena had one more task. Standing in the embassy's main assembly hall, she activated the communication system that would broadcast her message to every major species in the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Union," she began. 3 days ago, we received a distress call from the Kethmori, a peaceful species currently under attack by the Drakthul hegemony. The Galactic Council has chosen not to act. We understand their reasons. We do not share their conclusion." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "The Kethmori are under human protection as of this moment. We call upon the Drakthul hegemony to withdraw from Kethmori space immediately. Any further attacks on Kethmori civilians will be considered an act of war against humanity." The message ended, and Elena knew there was no turning back. In a few days, humanity would either save their ancient benefactors or die trying. Across the galaxy, the message was received with shock and disbelief. Most species assumed humanity had lost their minds. The peaceful traders and diplomats were challenging the most feared military power in known space. In the Drakthul command ship orbiting the Kethmori homeworld, Overlord Krax listened to the human message and laughed. These soft creatures thought they could threaten the mighty hegemony. He would show them what happened to those who defied Drakthul power. Neither Krax nor anyone else in the galaxy realized they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. Overlord Krax stood 8 feet tall, his thick gray skin marked with ritual scars that told the story of his victories. Each scar represented a world conquered, a species enslaved, or an enemy destroyed. His massive hands, each finger tipped with razor-sharp claws, gripped the railing of his command ship's bridge as he stared at the dying world below. Kethmor Prime had once been beautiful. Ancient records showed forests of silver trees and crystal lakes that reflected purple skies. Now, after 6 months of bombardment, the surface was a wasteland of craters and ash. The Kethmori had tried to surrender in the first week, offering everything they had in exchange for their lives. Krax had refused. Surrender was for the strong to grant to the weak. The weak deserved only death. "Status report," Krax growled to his tactical officer. "The remaining Kethmori have retreated to underground shelters in the northern continent," the officer replied, his voice trembling slightly. "Our deep penetration bombs have collapsed most of their tunnel systems. We estimate fewer than 10,000 survivors remain." "Good. How long until final extermination is complete?" "Perhaps 2 more days, Overlord. The last shelter complex is heavily shielded, but we will break through." Krax nodded with satisfaction. The Kethmori had been among the oldest species in the galaxy, their civilization spanning tens of thousands of years. But age meant nothing without strength. Their philosophy of peace and cooperation had made them weak. Their refusal to build weapons had made them prey. "Overlord," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown vessel. They claim to be from the Human Colonial Union." Krax's yellow eyes narrowed. "Humans, the traitor species from the Outer Rim?" "Yes, Overlord. They're requesting permission to approach under diplomatic immunity." Krax laughed, a sound like grinding stone. He had encountered humans before at various trade stations. Small, soft creatures with delicate pink skin and no natural weapons. They were known throughout the galaxy as merchants and negotiators, always seeking peaceful solutions to problems that should be solved with force. "Grant them approach," Krax ordered. "I'm curious to see what these little creatures want." An hour later, a sleek human diplomatic vessel entered the system. It was smaller than most Drakthol fighters, its hull gleaming white with blue Earth symbols painted on the sides. The ship looked fragile, built for speed and communication rather than combat. "Overlord," the communications officer announced. "The human ambassador requests to speak with you directly. Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the human ship's bridge. A woman in an elegant blue uniform stood facing the camera. She had short dark hair and calm brown eyes that seemed completely unafraid despite being surrounded by the most powerful war fleet in the galaxy. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Union," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I am here to discuss the current situation regarding the Kethmori." Krax leaned forward in his command throne. "There is no situation to discuss, human. This is Drakthol space now. The Kethmori are enemies of the hegemony and will be eliminated." "Overlord Krax," Elena continued, her voice steady, "I must inform you that the Kethmori people are now under official protection of the Human Colonial Union. We formally request that you cease all hostile actions and withdraw your forces from this system." The bridge fell silent. Several Drakthol officers exchanged glances of disbelief. Krax stared at the small human woman for several seconds before throwing back his massive head and roaring with laughter. "Protection?" Krax wheezed between laughs. "You? Little pink creature, do you know who you are speaking to? I am Krax the Destroyer. I have burned 1,000 worlds. I have crushed entire civilizations with my bare hands." Elena's expression never changed. "Overlord, the Human Colonial Union has existed in peace with all galactic civilizations for over 2 centuries. We have no wish to end that peace. However, we cannot allow the extinction of the Kethmori to continue." "Cannot allow?" Krax rose from his throne, his enormous frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "Human, you are in my space, surrounded by my fleet threatening me with your pathetic little ship. Your entire species commands what, 40 warships, 50? I have 200 battle cruisers in this system alone. The number of ships is irrelevant, Overlord. This is about what's right." Krax's amusement faded. The human's complete lack of fear was beginning to irritate him. "What's right is that the strong rule and the weak die. Your species has survived this long because you stay in your corner of the galaxy and don't interfere with your betters. I suggest you return to your trade routes before I decide to add Earth to my list of conquered worlds." Elena took a step closer to the camera. "Overlord Krax, I'm going to say this one more time very clearly. The Kethmori are under human protection. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." "Consequences?" Krax roared. "From you? From humans?" He gestured to his tactical officer. "Show this creature what happens to those who threaten the Drakthol hegemony." The tactical officer's claws moved across his console. On the main screen, Elena's ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. "Let that be a message to all who would challenge us." Krax declared to his bridge crew, "Send word to the fleet. Prepare a course for human space. If they want to protect the Kethmori so badly, they can join them in extinction." The bridge erupted in cheers and roars of approval. The Drakthol had never been challenged so directly by such a weak species. It would be satisfying to crush them and add their worlds to the hegemony. "Overlord," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving multiple transmissions from human space. It appears to be a general broadcast. Put it through. Let's hear them beg for mercy." The screen showed a different human, this one wearing a military uniform decorated with stars and ribbons. He was older than the ambassador, with gray hair and steel blue eyes that held no trace of fear. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. 47 minutes ago, the Drakthol hegemony murdered Ambassador Elena Vasquez while she was operating under diplomatic immunity. They destroyed her ship without warning during peaceful negotiations." Krax frowned. The human's tone was strange. There was no panic, no pleading, no fear, just cold, calm anger. "As of this moment," Admiral Chen continued, "a state of war exists between the Human Colonial Union and the Drakthol hegemony. All human civilians in contested space are ordered to evacuate immediately. All human military forces are ordered to Condition 1 alert." The transmission ended, leaving the Drakthol bridge in silence. "Overlord," the tactical officer said hesitantly, Our long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. Ships are jumping in at the edge of the system. How many ships? Krax demanded. Unknown, sir. The signatures are unusual. We're having difficulty getting accurate readings. Krax turned to his fleet commander. Send a squadron to investigate. If the humans want to die here instead of at their homeworld, we'll accommodate them. 6 Drakthul destroyers, each one capable of crushing a small fleet, accelerated toward the edge of the system where the hyperspace signatures had been detected. They were among the most advanced warships in the galaxy, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through any known armor and shields that could deflect almost any weapon. 20 minutes later, all contact with the squadron was lost. Overlord, the tactical officer reported, his voice now openly nervous. The squadron is gone. We're detecting debris fields at their last known positions. Gone? How can they be gone? What did the humans use? Unknown, sir. We never detected energy discharges consistent with plasma weapons. In fact, we never detected anything that looked like weapons fire at all. Krax stared at the tactical display. 6 destroyers destroyed without even managing to send a distress signal. Whatever had killed them had done it fast and clean. Sir, another officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The screen flickered to life again, showing Admiral Chen. But now he was standing on what was clearly a military bridge, surrounded by officers at combat stations. Overlord Krax, Chen said, his voice like ice. You have one opportunity to surrender. Order your fleet to stand down and prepare to be boarded. You will be taken into custody to face trial for war crimes against the Kethmori people. Surrender? Krax snarled. To you? Human, I don't know what trick you used to destroy my scouts, but you face the might of the hegemony. I have conquered species that ruled the galaxy when your world was still covered in ice. Chen's expression never changed. Overlord, you made 2 mistakes today. First, you murdered a diplomat. Second, you threatened the Kethmori. He leaned forward slightly. But your biggest mistake was thinking we were weak because we chose to be peaceful. The transmission ended. On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout the system. Not 6 or 12 ships, but hundreds of them. They seemed to materialize out of nowhere as if space itself was giving birth to warships. Overlord, the tactical officer whispered. I'm reading over 400 human vessels. They're everywhere. Krax stared at the display in disbelief. The ships were unlike anything in the Drakthul database. Some looked like converted cargo vessels, others like enlarged fighters. But all of them radiated power signatures that made his massive Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display show Overlord Krax's fleet in perfect detail. For 3 centuries, humanity had hoped this day would never come. They had built their galactic reputation on trade, diplomacy, and peaceful expansion. But they had never forgotten the lessons of their own violent history. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, all ships report ready for combat operations. The Drakthul fleet is maintaining defensive positions around the planet. Chen nodded. Around him, the bridge buzzed with quiet efficiency. No shouting, no panic, just professional military personnel doing their jobs. It was a sharp contrast to what intelligence reports said about Drakthul command structures, which relied heavily on intimidation and fear. Open a channel to all ships, Chen ordered. This is Admiral Chen to all task force commanders. Operation Nemesis is now in effect. You know your targets. You know your mission. Bring our friends home. The human fleet began to move, and Overlord Krax finally saw what 3 centuries of human engineering had accomplished. The cargo ship Prosperity, which had been carrying grain to the Altarian colonies just days before, shed its outer hull plates like a snake molting its skin. Underneath was a sleek destroyer bristling with weapons that no Drakthul scanner could identify. The Peaceful Dawn, registered as a passenger liner, split apart to reveal a carrier launching squadrons of fighters that moved faster than anything in the Drakthul fleet. All across the system, civilian ships revealed themselves to be warships in disguise. Mining vessels became heavy cruisers. Research ships transformed into electronic warfare platforms. Even the small courier ships that carried mail between colonies opened weapon bays that had been hidden behind false cargo containers. Sir, the Drakthul tactical officer said, his voice shaking. Our sensors show massive energy buildup in the human fleet, but the readings don't match any known weapon systems. Krax watched in growing horror as the human ships moved into attack formation. They didn't rely on massive plasma cannons like the Drakthul. Instead, they used weapons that seemed almost primitive. Kinetic projectiles, missiles and focused energy beams that somehow cut through hegemony shields like they weren't there. All ships. "Open fire!" Krax roared. "Destroy them all!" The Drakthul fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids discharged in perfect coordination. Energy torpedoes that had destroyed entire colonies streaked toward the human ships. For a moment, space was filled with enough destructive power to sterilize a dozen worlds. But the human ships weren't where the weapons were aimed. "Impossible," Krax whispered, watching the tactical display. The humans had somehow predicted exactly where his ships would fire and moved accordingly. Every shot missed, hitting empty space where the human fleet had been microseconds before. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are using some kind of predictive algorithm. They're anticipating our targeting solutions before we fire. Then fire randomly. Fire everything." But it was too late. The human counterattack had begun. Instead of the massive energy discharges the Drakthul expected, the human ships fired what looked like simple metal projectiles. But these projectiles moved at significant fractions of light speed, guided by computers that could adjust their course millions of times per second. When they hit Drakthul's shields, they simply punched through as if the energy barriers weren't there. The Drakthul destroyer Bloodfang exploded, as a tungsten rod, no larger than a telephone pole, tore through its entire length in less than a second. The cruiser Terror of Worlds was cut in half by a focused laser beam that somehow maintained coherence over thousands of kilometers. The massive dreadnought Crusher of Hope found itself surrounded by tiny human fighters that moved like insects, impossible to target but deadly in their precision. "Admiral," Chen's communication officer reported, "the Kethmori are sending a message. They're asking if they should prepare to evacuate their shelters." Chen smiled grimly. "Tell them to stay put for now. We'll have them out safely within the hour." On the planet's surface, Elder Veltar listened to the battle raging in space above. He was the same Kethmori who had made the decision to help humanity 3 centuries ago, though he was much older now and moved slowly. His people had gathered in the deepest shelters they could find, expecting to die when the Drakthul finally broke through their defenses. Instead, they heard explosions in space and felt the ground stop shaking from orbital bombardment. "Elder," one of the younger Kethmori said, "the human ship signals are getting stronger. I think they're winning." Veltar closed his eyes and remembered a blue world covered in gray clouds where children sang in space stations while their planet died below. He had wondered many times over the centuries if he had made the right choice. Now, listening to human voices on the communication channels organizing rescue operations, he knew he had. In space, the battle was becoming a rout. The Drakthul fleet, which had never lost a major engagement in over 1,000 years, was being systematically destroyed by enemies they couldn't understand or effectively fight. "Sir," a terrified Drakthul officer reported to Krax, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans are using some kind of adaptive targeting system. Every time we adjust our shields, their weapons adapt to penetrate them." Krax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Human ships were moving through his fleet like predators among prey, destroying his vessels with surgical precision. But they weren't just randomly attacking. They were targeting specific ships, command vessels, communication arrays, weapons platforms. They were dismantling the Drakthul war machine piece by piece. "Send a distress signal to Hegemony Command," Krax ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements immediately." "Sir, the humans are jamming all our long-range communications. We can't reach the rest of the fleet." Krax realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just trying to save the Kethmori. They were making a statement. They wanted the galaxy to see what happened when someone threatened those under human protection. "Sir," another officer called out, "the human admiral is requesting to speak with you again." Chen appeared on the main screen, but now he was clearly in the middle of a battle. The bridge around him showed damage from combat, but his crew continued working with deadly efficiency. "Overlord," Chen said calmly, "you now have one final chance to surrender. Order your remaining ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded." "Never," Krax roared. "The Drakthul do not surrender." Chen nodded sadly. "I thought you might say that." He turned to someone off-screen. "Colonel Martinez, You are authorized to proceed with Operation Clean Sweep. New ships appeared on the tactical display. These were clearly human military vessels, but they were massive beyond anything Krax had imagined. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed his own flagship emerged from hyperspace, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that made the earlier human ships look small by comparison. "Sir," the tactical officer whispered, "power readings from those ships they're impossible. No known reactor technology could produce that much energy." The human dreadnoughts opened fire, and Krax finally understood what real power looked like. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from the massive ships, each one powerful enough to destroy a battlecruiser with a single shot. But the humans didn't just destroy the remaining Drakthul vessels. They captured them. Tractor beams pulled disabled Drakthul ships into human cargo bays. Boarding pods launched from the dreadnoughts, carrying human marines who somehow managed to overcome Drakthul soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. Within minutes, the entire remaining fleet was either destroyed or captured. Krax found his own ship surrounded by human vessels. His bridge shook as something attached to the hull. "Sir," his security chief reported, "we have boarders. Human soldiers are cutting through the blast doors to the bridge." "Impossible. How can their soldiers be stronger than ours?" The blast doors exploded inward, and human marines in powered armor rushed onto the bridge. They moved with perfect coordination, stunning Drakthul officers with weapons that somehow bypassed their natural resistance to energy weapons. In less than 30 seconds, the entire bridge crew was unconscious except for Krax himself. One of the Marines, clearly the leader, removed his helmet to reveal a scarred human face with steel-gray eyes. Despite being half Krax's size, he showed no fear as he approached the massive alien. "Overlord Krax," the Marine said in perfect Drakthul, "you are under arrest for war crimes against the Kethmori people and the murder of Ambassador Vasquez. You will be taken into custody to await trial." Krax lunged forward with his massive claws, intending to tear the small human apart. Instead, he found himself flat on the deck, his arm twisted behind his back and restraints being applied. The human had moved faster than Krax's eyes could follow. "How?" Krax gasped. The Marine looked down at him with something that might have been pity. "Overlord, you spent so long convincing everyone you were strong, you forgot to actually become strong. We spent 300 years getting ready for this conversation." As Krax was dragged from his own bridge, he could see through the viewports that human rescue ships were already landing on the planet below. 18 months after the Battle of Kethmor Prime, Admiral Chen stood in the ruins of the Drakthul capital city on Hegemonia. The massive pyramids that had once housed the Empire's ruling council lay broken and shattered. But human engineers were already working to rebuild them as hospitals and schools. The war had lasted exactly 1 year and 27 days. Not because the Drakthul had fought well, but because humanity had insisted on liberating every single world the hegemony controlled. Every slave species, every conquered colony, every concentration camp where the Drakthul had held prisoners for experiments. "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez reported, approaching through the construction site that had once been the Palace of Eternal Conquest. "The last hegemony stronghold in the Rigel sector has surrendered. General Patterson reports they found over 2 million prisoners in slave camps. Most are from species we thought were extinct." Chen nodded grimly. Every world they liberated revealed new horrors. The Drakthul hadn't just conquered their enemies. They had systematically destroyed entire cultures, enslaved populations, and committed acts of cruelty that made even hardened human soldiers sick. "What's the status on war crimes tribunals?" Chen asked. Justice Minister Williams reports that they've processed over 3,000 cases so far. Most of the Drakthul leadership has been sentenced to life imprisonment on rehabilitation colonies. The lower-ranking soldiers are going through re-education programs. Chen had been surprised by the galactic reaction to humanity's justice system. Most species expected the humans to simply exterminate the Drakthul, the way the hegemony had exterminated their victims. Instead, humans had established courts, gathered evidence, and provided legal representation even for their worst enemies. "Sir," Rodriguez continued, "there's also a message from Earth. The Galactic Council wants to schedule an emergency session to discuss the new political situation." Chen almost smiled. The new political situation was that the galaxy's most feared empire had been completely dismantled by a species most people had considered harmless traitors. The power balance that had existed for millennia was gone, and everyone was trying to figure out what came next. Tell them I'll be there next week, Chen said. I want to finish the last prisoner exchange first. The prisoner exchange. It had been Elena's idea, transmitted in her final message before the Drakthul destroyed her ship. Instead of simply defeating the hegemony, humanity would return every single person the Drakthul had enslaved to their home worlds. Some species had been prisoners for so long they had forgotten they had ever been free. Chen made his way through the construction site to a landing pad where human transport ships were loading former prisoners for return trips to their homeworlds. The sight still amazed him. Creatures from dozens of different species, all working together under human protection. A small group of Altarians were helping elderly Corvan prisoners into medical transport pods. Zephyrian engineers worked alongside human technicians to repair damaged life support systems. Children from 6 different species played together in a temporary school set up in what had once been a Drakthul weapons factory. Admiral Chen turned to see Elder Veltar approaching. The ancient Kethemori moved slowly, but his large dark eyes were bright with something that looked like wonder. Elder, Chen said, inclining his head respectfully, how are your people settling in on New Kethmore? Better than we dared hope, Veltar replied. Your terraforming teams have made the new world more beautiful than our original home. But Admiral, that's not why I wanted to speak with you. Chen waited patiently. The Kethmori were a thoughtful species, and Veltar had earned the right to speak his mind. I wanted to tell you about a conversation I had with a young Drakthul prisoner yesterday, Veltar continued. His name is Krix. He was a low-ranking soldier, probably never killed anyone personally. He's going through your re-education program. How is he adjusting? That's just it. He asked me why you humans were helping him. Why you were teaching him to read and write instead of simply killing him. He couldn't understand it. Veltar paused. Do you know what I told him? What did you tell him? I told him that 300 years ago his people would have let mine die without a second thought. But humans saved us not because they owed us anything, but because it was the right thing to do, and now they're saving him for the same reason. Chen felt a tightness in his chest. What did he say to that? He cried, Veltar said simply. He asked if he could learn to be like humans instead of like Drakthul. I think that's the moment he stopped being a soldier and started being a person again. The conversation was interrupted by Chen's communication device. Admiral, this is Colonel Martinez at Galactic Command. We have a situation developing in the Centauri sector. The Rigelian Empire is mobilizing their fleet and demanding that we withdraw from liberated Drakthul worlds. Chen sighed. He had been expecting this. With the Drakthul gone, other aggressive species were trying to claim the power vacuum. The Rigelians had always been expansionist, held in check only by fear of the hegemony. What's their force strength? Chen asked. About 800 ships, sir. They're demanding we meet them at the neutral zone for negotiations. Elder Veltar was listening to the conversation with growing concern. Admiral, surely they don't intend to fight you. After what happened to the Drakthul, Chen looked at the old Kethemori sadly. Elder, I'm afraid some species only learn through experience. The Rigelians think the Drakthul were weak and that's why they lost. They think they can succeed where the hegemony failed. But that's madness. Your fleet destroyed the most powerful military force in galactic history. Yes, Chen agreed. But they think we were just lucky, or that we used some kind of secret weapon that we can't use again. They don't understand that our real weapon was being ready for a fight we hoped would never come. Chen activated his communicator. Colonel Martinez patched me through to the Rigelian fleet commander. The holographic image of a tall insectoid alien appeared in the air between them. The Rigelian's compound eyes gleamed with arrogance as he spoke. I am War Commander Zekthal of the Rigelian Empire. You will immediately withdraw your forces from all former hegemony worlds and transfer control to Rigelian administration. These worlds belong to the strong, not to weak creatures who show mercy to prisoners. Chen looked at the alien commander with the same calm expression he had used with Overlord Krax. War Commander, the worlds you're referring to belong to the species that originally lived on them. We're helping them rebuild their civilizations and establish self-governance. Unacceptable, Zekthal chittered angrily. The Rigelian Empire claims these worlds by right of conquest. If you do not withdraw within one planetary rotation, we will remove you by force. War Commander, Chen said quietly. I'm going to give you some advice. Turn your fleet around and go home. Don't make the same mistake the Drakthul made. Zekthal laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The Drakthul were weak and corrupt. We are the true inheritors of galactic power. Your victory was a fluke that will not be repeated. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at empty air. Elder Veltar looked deeply troubled. Admiral, how many more species will challenge you before they understand? Chen thought about the question carefully. The galaxy had lived under the rule of the strong for so long that many species couldn't imagine any other way. They saw humanity's victory as a transfer of power rather than a change in philosophy. As many as it takes, Chen said finally. The galaxy needs to learn that kindness isn't weakness, that showing mercy doesn't mean being helpless. Some species will learn through example, others, he shrugged, others will learn the hard way. 3 days later, the Rigelian Empire surrendered unconditionally after their entire fleet was captured in less than 6 hours. Like the Drakthul before them, they discovered that humanity's strength wasn't in any single weapon or technology. It was in 3 centuries of preparation, combined with an absolute refusal to back down when defending their principles. The war crimes trials that followed revealed that the Rigelians had committed many of the same atrocities as the Drakthul, just on a smaller scale. But like the Drakthul prisoners, most Rigelian soldiers adapted quickly to human re-education programs. It turned out that cruelty was often learned behavior that could be unlearned with patience and proper guidance. 6 months later, Chen stood once again on an observation deck, but this time he was aboard a civilian transport traveling to the reopening of the Galactic Council. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see dozens of ships from species that were attending their first council session in decades. The Kethemori had sent a delegation, as had the rebuilt civilizations of 17 species that had been extinct under Drakthul rule. Former slave worlds were sending their first free representatives in generations. Even some reformed Drakthul and Rigelians were attending as observers, learning how democratic processes worked. Admiral, his aide approached with a message pad. Final casualty reports from the Rigelian conflict. Chen took the pad and read the numbers. In the entire 6-hour war, humanity had lost 4 ships and 23 personnel. The Rigelians had lost nothing more than their pride and their empire.